Very shortly, I'd like to invite to the stage Arihia Bennett, who is the CEO of Te Rūnanga or Ngai Tahu. Now, Arihia Bennett, MNZM, Ngai Tahu, Ngai Tuahiriri, Ngāti Waiwai, Ngāti Parau, has been the CEO of Te Rūnanga or Ngai Tahu since 2012. She is experienced in governance and has been a trusted advisor to government with roles including the Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Commissioner following the September 2010 earthquake, the Director for Ngai Tahu Development Corp from 1999 through to 2002, and Chair from 2002 through to 2005. Arihia has also served on the boards of Bernardo's NZ and the Christchurch Women's Refuge, now known as Aviva. She is a current member of the Global Women's Network and the Tuahiwi Māori Women's Welfare League. Nau mai haramai ki te Connections 22 e te maraikura. Let's please welcome Arihia Bennett for our next session.
One out. Au tūtahi o te rā, te pau whakahaere me te rōpū whakahaere o te hi Aotearoa, tēnei te mihi ki a koutou. Tuaurua, i ngā manuhiri tuarangi, tēnei te mihi ki a koutou me nau mai haere mai. Ko waiau, ko Arihia Bennett, tōku ingoa. Ngai Tahu, Ngāti Parau, me ngā pui o kuiwi. No Ōtautahi, tuahiwi taku kāinga, he mahi ana hau kei te kai hautū o Te Rūnanga Ngai Tahu. Kia ora everyone, and thank you Jenny May. 2012, I'm already feeling quite old standing up here, and because in the life cycle of a CEO, it's usually 2 or 3 years, and then a new one comes in. So I'm about to talk to you about the love of my iwi and what generates that sense of enthusiasm and why I'm still there. Ko tēnei te kaupapa o mana Māori honouring te tiriti o Waitangi, and it's in the spirit of tikanga toru reo, the 2 of our 3 official languages, that I greet you today. Certainly it's an honour to hold this conversation on mana Māori with you today, as I draw on some of the whakapapa kōrero of Ngai Tahu, which doesn't just start with the settlement in 1998, but instead it has its beginnings over 7 and now 8 generations. And to Ngai Tahu, mana Māori is focused on our identity, on our mana moto hake and our rangatiratanga. All aspects that I know each of you in your own whānau set out to achieve as we raise our tamariki, our mokapono and our whānau in our communities, and such is what you are doing in terms of the work that you are involved with, in terms of that, remembering that identity, mana moto hake and rangatiratanga. So the whakatauki of this conference, Connections 2022, creating a brighter future, mō tātou mō ka uri a muri ake nei, for us and our children after us, is a whakatauki that comes from our Ngai Tahu tipuna. And so we hold that very dearly, and we work to practice that as much as possible, not only conceptually, but in our everyday living and our being. And therefore, a brighter future, we must not only be grounded in our past, but we must be match fit for the present, and we must also be focused on a future that continues to weave our Ngai Tahu korowai of identity mai rānau forever and ever. Just because there has been a settlement, one cannot sit back on the couch in those comfy slippers, but instead we have to be on our toes, preserving our culture, nurturing our values, our practices and our customs, protecting our Ngai Tahu nationhood, our land, the water, its environment, and growing our people, our whakapapa, while constantly innovating and looking ahead of us and being astute and savvy in the economic and the commercial domains, whilst imbuing our own Ngai Tahu identity. So gone are the days where our identity expression was the kōwhaiwhai pattern on the wall. The kōwhaiwhai pattern is still on the wall, and the kōwhaiwhai pattern represents our whakapapa, but it is much greater today. Great. Not too good on the old technical side here, but we've got some help at the back there. Before I step through some of our own mana Ngai Tahu developments, it is fitting to anchor into the 5 pou of Ihi Aotearoa that must underpin a preferred future. I want you to think about these 5 pou as I draw on some examples that have worked to grow our whānau, our hapu and our papa Te Rūnanga, and our iwi well-being. So before I begin into stepping into the world of Ngai Tahu, I'd just like you just to sit back and just go with us on this opening video that we have that really does capture that history that I've talked about in terms of our settlement and where we are today.
Tahu po te ki, taku tupuna, hoki wairua mai, arohaina ki o uri karanga kera aratakina toiwi
Mo te kai kua hora,
Mo te kai kua hora,
hei whakaki te tinana,
hei whakaki te tinana,
hei oranga, hui e, tai ki e.
tai ki e.
au e koro e karanga kera kore au a koe e ware tia
tia tāwhia kia ita.
Te mana tipuna, te mana whenua,
Te mana tangata.
Thank you for taking some time out just to step through a beautiful representation of where we've come from in terms of our past, what's happening today, as I mentioned earlier, not only about focusing on our environment, our well-being, but also the astuteness of the economic and the commercial and the community development. And our beautiful waiata sung there by young Ngai Tahu lad from Littleton, and the waiata became one of our anthems during settlement, written by our whanaunga from Tuahuriri. But that every time we play that video, it really resonates as I've grown up in Ngai Tahu, with where we've come from, what we're doing, and as we move forward. So let's talk a little bit about the building that sense of well-being, building that sense of whānau and community well-being. And we know that, as I mentioned earlier, the settlement just didn't begin back in 1986. And this is really a respect to our tipuna who were going before the Crown right from 1839 actually, and from where we took the settlement to in 1986. But behind those astute negotiators were the generations of our whānau, and it's important that I acknowledge that community spirit of our tipuna who helped us be here today. And also one of the things that a lot of people don't know around building a sense of collective well-being, as the settlement was nearing its finalisation, our negotiators were able to look at binding us together with the legislation, so that actually enabled us to come together under a statute known as the Te Rūnanga or Ngai Tahu Act. And you can see where we started there since settlement in 1998. This next slide here, I really want to focus on this sense of well-being, and I took this slide to an international learning institute in Europe, and it was an opportunity for me to share a little bit about my whakapapa. As a group of leaders, we were asked to bring something that represented who we are, and of course a lot of people had pictures of holidays and skiing and in the sun, and then I popped this picture up here. And the story or the whakapapa kōrero that goes with this for me, this is actually at the opening of Te Huru on the west coast, Ngāti Waiwai in Arahura. It's the opening of a new marae there. And when I talk about past, present and future, we see there in terms of, in the front there, our women doing the wero. And from a present day point of view, many of us are attuned from a contemporary way of being that it is our men who do the wero. Well, we know in our own whakapapa kōrero that we know our women had a role there. When our men were out, our women had a role. And so it was important for us to bring these teaching, the learnings of actually what has gone before, and bring that back into the kaupapa of today. So to be able to get to the place where we opened Te Huru, there is a lot that's gone into that in terms of the development, the histories of who we are, but also the funding, the contributions from the wider Te Rūnanga organisation that have helped us build a real community atmosphere of which was once there before, and it's our role and our duty to support the mana whenua to bring that back there. So not only do you see the wero there, you see our kaumātua up on the mahau there, and if you think about it in terms of the rehearsal and getting to this place of opening Te Huru, the whakapapa kōrero that's in the waharoa itself, the carvings, all coming together represented that past, bringing it into the present, and the duties of these young people in terms of preserving, protecting, caring, and then also innovating as they move forward. So I actually thought this was a great opportunity to actually show that past, present, and future moving ahead. So a little bit about who we are. We do have a geographical boundary that is set in our statute. And a lot of people don't know that we run from Kaikoura right through to Murihiku. And we have 18 representations of leadership in our community. So there is 18 papatipu marae, and many of you who work alongside your marae in the communities. And if you're from Te Waipounamu, that some of you will be working alongside some of these papatipu. We're a relatively young whānau. We've got over 76,000 who are registered whānau members. And when we're thinking about our future, and you're thinking about well-being, we have to think about actually what is it that we need to do to support our whānau growing and being practice and future fit. So it's important for us to actually see what those numbers are like, and it helps us look at not only geographically, but also it helps us to see where our whānau are overseas and how we continue to engage them moving forward. The organisation, just like any organisation such as where you belong, is structured in a way that at the top we are governed by our Ngai Tahu whānau. So behind that sense of leadership, the governance at the top there are our 76,000 whānau, and right in that governance sit 18 governors. So in theory, I've got 18 bosses, but actually some days it feels like 76,000. And especially when you're in a 3-generation household, you'll get home and actually the kumara vine has already worked before I've got home, and they've told me what's gone on for the day. But that's iwi, that's whānau, and actually that's community, and you'll be familiar with that, no doubt, in your organisations. We are structured in a way where we have a look at we've got some commercial entities, and we've also embracing our broader wellbeing outcomes, such as what I described to you in the photograph there of Te Huru. And it's our duty in the office and in our holdings to make sure we act as the servant for our communities. And trust me, as I said to you, when I get home, I have duties just like everyone else. So there's no point me pulling out my role, because that doesn't have any weight in the home as it does, and it doesn't have any weight on the marae either. So I just want to really step into a few of the aspects of actually what well-being is about. And Tā Tipini often talks to us about Ngai Tahutanga. You can be in any organisation, but the role and the responsibility of Te Rūnanga o Ngāi Tahu itself is to foster and grow that sense of Ngāi Tahu, that sense of our culture, our identity, who we are, what our histories are, how we want to actually bring those histories forward, represent those not only in our physical representation, our language, our archives, our culture, our expression of art, our waiata, our kōrero, etc. And we actually want to keep sowing that continuously, so we take those through the generations. The sorts of things that you would be doing in your own whānau, the sorts of things that have been passed down from your generations and that you actually want to pass down to your own whānau. So we too have that responsibility as a tribe to make sure the Ngāi Tahutanga part is on the frontal lobe. Otherwise, we're no different to any other organisation. Embracing well-being means a broad sense of well-being. This is not just in one dimension of health. And if I think about the expression of ihi Aotearoa here today, everything that you're doing is embracing that sense of well-being. We need to be covering that, and we need to be looking into our whānau and actually looking at what are the core priorities, what are our whānau saying to us, listening, and not only listening, but articulating that in a way that our whānau want that expressed. This is not about the centre or an organisation, a corporate body actually dictating and undertaking things on behalf of whānau. This is actually about listening, taking it on board, advocating, brokering, getting alongside and empowering and enabling the community to be the best that they can be in well-being and mātauranga and culture, arts and environment, etc. So continuously you can see that it's not a dull vibe. There's all sorts of aspects going on. I thought I'd pop this one in here because it really gives you a sense of, when I think about mātauranga, up until COVID came along a couple of years ago, we have a program called Te Pōkaiao, and we look at a group of Ngai Tahu young rangatahi from year 10 and 11. And this is focused on a STEM program, and we are focused with this particular group because it's before they're making those decisions into what sort of career pathway that they are taking. And it's a beautiful way to bring them together, to learn about their culture, their identity, their whakapapa, who they are, to then also look at some of those wonderful aspects of science, technology, etc., moving forward where we want leadership in those particular areas. And we're about to reignite this again in early next year. I also mentioned to you the expression of whānau hapu papatipu Rūnanga. The communities is actually where it's all happening, on the marae, out in the communities. And so it's important for us to, at the centre, be looking at how we support and how we enable those communities to foster, grow and develop, how they build their infrastructures, how they develop their infrastructure, how they develop their capability, their capacity, and also supporting them to keep their cultural expertise alive. So this is a beautiful, this is Tuahuriri, just north of Christchurch here, and here we see a wonderful expression of the rātana coming through Tuahuriri, which we know our generations were brought up within. One of the bases of the settlement was absolutely about loss of land and the opportunity for us to access mahinga kai, to protect and preserve and care for the environment. And this remains at our forefront. Many of our community whānau are immersed in the environment, te Aotearoa. So we have a large expression of supporting our communities to be the best that they can to protect and care for the communities. That's not only as a practitioner, that's moving right through into leadership, into governance, and actually looking at what are the best ways to preserve and protect and care for that environment, and working together in the communities, not on our own. There was, at different times, there are some aspects where people seem to think that we're going off in a corner and doing something weird, but actually we want to grow the environment, we want to protect the environment, and we want to be a part of actually leading what is best for the environment, as we did before. The whakaariki is an area that is really important to us. So I talked about earlier the settlement, the deed of settlement, 1998. So it didn't all finish then. So, and I talked earlier about being on our toes, taking the comfy slippers off and being on our toes. There's not a day that goes by when we are constantly ensuring that we are preserving and protecting our settlement. And that also means working in a challenging and sometimes confronting way with a bias or a perspective. It also means that we are challenging the Crown at different times, where their perceptions have worked somewhat differently to what our understanding of what the settlement is. And this is one area that we must remain on our toes and be thinking ahead before something comes into place. And right at the moment, the environment is an absolutely important aspect for us. When I think about health, the move to Māori health, that's also important for us. So for te whakaariki, but strategically making sure that we are engaged in looking at what our strategy and our identity is going to be, it's important for us to be up there protecting our settlement, but also influencing where we can. I talked about being savvy and smart, and our negotiators were extremely smart, and my job as a servant to the tribe is to be here supporting, articulating what was actually put in place. And the importance of this here is also around economic investment. And you will have seen earlier on the chart there where we are vested in a number of areas of commercial and economic development. That is just as important to us, because we want to make sure that we are a thriving community, we are a thriving whānau that is intergenerational going forward, and to be able to do that, we must participate in the economic and the investment growth of not only Te Waipounamu, but also Aotearoa. That means working together, collaborating in ventures that are not only in the Ngai Tahu rohe, but also across the country, with other iwi, with other organisations. And this here is an example of some of those. Another example here is that as we have taken the settlement forward from the one part of the dollar value of $170 million at settlement. This year we'll be raising our numbers very shortly. We see that up to asset base at around $1.7 billion. But it's important for me to acknowledge here that certainly by infrastructure, that money goes back into, this is about intergenerational responsibility. So that's not sitting in people's pockets, it's going back into those communities as I've just described through all of those particular programs. And we've got on there, we've actually invested $650 million, but we're up to about $700 million back into our whānau communities, where we're seeing beautiful infrastructures develop, communities growing, young people in education, roles and activities in health and well-being, sports, mātauranga, etc. So it's important for us to take some of that return and make sure it's vested back into the community. One of the particular areas, and if you think about Te Aotearoa, and this is of no surprise to you, and if you could remember that map there before around where all the Te Rūnanga are situated, you'll see they're all coastal. And we all know that that coast is going to change over a period of time. So we have to be invested in what climate change is looking like, and we're seeing the results of that right now. So where our Ngāi Tahu Te Rūnanga are either updating or upgrading or rebuilding their whare or their marae, they are moving. They're moving inland, or they're looking at what the impact of climate change is about. Not only from a Te Rūnanga point of view, but as we are engaged in a number of commercial activities, we also have to be morally, socially, and climate change responsible in all of those areas. And trust me, if we are not, these are mighty long ears. They get pulled, and our whānau are not short at being able to say, you are not practicing what you preach. If we are vested in the area of farming, commercial farming and dairy farming, our whānau are the first to say to us, what are you doing in regenerative practices? What are you doing in terms of caring for the environment? What are you doing with the water? And so it's important for us to not only go into a commercial activity, but if we're thinking about the whole broader well-being, we have to be responsible in all of those particular areas. Talked a little bit about mātauranga education before. One of the important things that we must be is not inward-looking. We have to, if we're thinking about being future-focused, from a global point of view, we have to be engaging internationally. So that's not only looking at ourselves, but it's actually looking at what are the trends, what's happening across the world. And the way we like to do that is we like to work with other Indigenous cultures. And so having worked with the Alaskans, with the Hawaiians, it's really important for us to be involved in First Nations from Canada, also working with America First Nations as well, to actually look at what, not only the social implications of well-being, but actually what are the sorts of dynamics that we could collectively come together and actually express together so that we can work internationally. So this is an area that we have been engaged in for quite some time, and we will continue to do that, so we can also look at what other Indigenous practices have been successful rather than going down our own rabbit hole. I want to talk to you a little bit about Te Kura Takapini, and this is a really, if I move back to the settlement, the deed of settlement, and if we think well back, even before the deed of settlement, around our ancestors and how they cared for the environment, how they nourished the mahinga kai, and how they protected the waterways. Roll forward to where we are now, it's a bit of an unattractive situation. And our governance, our leadership, our whānau really wanted to actually take a lead in expressing what we can be doing, working together under our own rangatiratanga, working together with communities to look at how we protect and care for the environment. And so we have formed a special context in our organisation that just sits alongside so that they can address those challenges, so that they can look at and be confronted with what's going on in the wider community, the wider Aotearoa, but essentially stand tall from a tūtangata point of view to actually say we want to care and protect the environment, and we want to actually look at how we support and maintaining that fresh water comes to the fore, so that we can once again see our mahinga kai, our practices and our participation in the community that where it was once before, and we want to be able to bring that back. So we take no, we don't make any apologies here. It's important, you know, if you're thinking about being creative, innovative, remember when we think about the whakatauki for the connections here around this hui about well-being, a lot of that sustenance does come from the water, from our fresh water. So look, I've stepped through a few of the aspects that that I wanted to share with you about mana Māori from a Ngai Tahu point of view. And if I think about some of these points here that we've got on this slide, and before I step through and complete this kōrero here today, I want you to pause and ask yourself some questions about your role and how you are going to remain match fit and future focused. Today, we're engaged in a complexity of social issues, and that too will be woven in through the sporting environment. We want more meaningful demonstration of our values woven into our sport. These things are not going to go away, so we must lean into it, and we must move with a growing diverse community and a society that wants greater inclusiveness. We've recently seen that in some examples that have come to the fore. And in fact, it's not even recent. If I go way, way back in the history of this country, and we go way back into looking at Springbok tours, etc., we know that we as a Aotearoa, as a community, We're pretty vibrant, we're pretty courageous, and we stand up for what we want. You are going to be seeing this expression come more to the fore if you're not seeing that at the moment. You need to lean into it and you need to do something about it. You need to get with the program and build a sense of knowledge and understanding. As you as representative leaders and administrators, advocates of government agencies, community trusts and sports practitioners and many more, I want you to ask yourselves what your own attitude towards mana Māori is. And I recently gave a speech at the police college to a group of young recruits going through. And one of the things that I said, and it comes from my own 101 social work practice, be honest with your own attitude. And sometimes we sort of squash that at the back there because we're working in the here and now. But little do we realise it comes up through our pores and the way we act and the way we behave and the way we demonstrate. Now, if you're going to be match fit for that preferred future, you need to lean in and actually, first of all, hold the mirror up and have a look at what is my attitude towards this? What am I doing? And what am I doing that will actually help support and grow a greater preferred society? Not only seeking your knowledge, but how you're going to enhance your skills so that you are honestly advocating a partnering te tiriti, mana Māori inclusiveness into your practice. And I know that might sound confronting, but probably isn't. You're probably already aware of that because you didn't just fall into these positions. So you already come with a sense of courage, bravery, a sense of intellect, competency, capability. And all I'm doing today is actually encouraging you to bring that to the fore. So I want to close my kōrero here today by coming back and looking at this whakatauki, mō tātou ā, mō kauri a muri aki nei. There's a beautiful waiata that goes with that, by the way, but you won't be hearing that today. Growing well-being. And every year when we put the annual report out at Ngai Tahu, I know the annual report police want me to put something else on the front cover apart from whānau, but as long as I'm there, there's going to be whānau on the front. Because that's actually what we're about, that's what you're about. That's what you're about today, and it's about what you're growing, what you're sowing, and what you're growing to make it a better place for the future. And I want to leave you in the words of Tā Tipini O'Regan. Ngai Tahu and Te Rūnanga o Ngai Tahu has one primary function, and that is to maintain and flourish the heritage and the identity of our people intergenerationally. We must maintain and nourish our identity so our people can have a greater sense of belonging and a greater sense of well-being. Kia ora.